Welcome back, everyone. Glad you're all still here. So we are going to kick off our afternoon session of scheduled presentations now with Nicole Cunha and Quincy Knapp, and their presentation titled Universal Design and Staff Leadership, Addressing Accessibility in Libraries Internationally.
Sound check for the internet too? All good? Okay, thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Quincy. My name is covered by our thing. And we're presenting on Universal Design Staff Leadership.
Addressing Accessibility in Libraries Internationally. I'm Nicole, by the way. How you doing? Can you hear me okay? Online?
All right, great. So,
it was working a second ago. You're with us?
okay. All right. So also we have put a handout in your folder. So if you'd like to follow along on that as well, there's a lot of options. Okay, so first of all, a little overview. Let's talk about some frameworks that we'd like to work within. First, we'd like to talk a little bit about third space, and then universal design principles. And then we're going to really narrow down to one case study called at the Prague Králové Municipal Library, which is in the Czech Republic. And there we'll really be talking about these universal design principles as applied in that library. So space and lighting, their audio library, which is very extensive. And then Nicole will...
I'll be talking about staff and students, representation in the community and reflecting our community, teaching advocacy in libraries, and also LAS programs and disability conscious building.
Okay, so first of all, what is third space? I feel like this is actually a topic that we talk about a lot in libraries, but it is the public sphere. It is taverns in a medieval world, coffee shops, laundromats, etc. Anything that is not work and not home is the third space. So this really helps us define libraries as third spaces. It's places that we gather to create community, and we really hope to have libraries function as centers where all are welcome and that we can gather to have a conversational give and take. So how do we create this third space within libraries? There's two ways of organizing social space. One of them is not very welcoming as a third space environment. It's one in which the space is predefined, that there's one use for this space, and it's sort of a single use. So for example, if you have a reading room, and in the reading room you're only supposed to read, and you're supposed to read a certain way. That's not necessarily conducive to creating this sort of give and take community social space. However, if we were trying to make consciously this third space, this social space, we would make it a space that's sort of a living process, in which the patrons are able to seize the space and use it for their own use. In which this space, the use of the space is created from initiatives from the patrons in any way that they need to use the space. So if we want to build a pillow fort in the reading room, and that's going to help the community, that's what we should be able to be there for. But that also opens it up to, if third space is welcoming to all, we really need to make it accessible to all. So we need to make it barrier-free so we can all enter into this space. And to be barrier-free is to be easily negotiated by everyone, including those who have disabilities. And no special actions are needed on anyone's part in order to enter the space. So it should be easy to access. And on that note, let's talk about how we do that. So these are the 7 principles of universal design.
which are also on your handout.
Yes.
You can follow along.
Yeah, and they're also a little more extensive on the handout, so if you want to have some more elaboration on certain things. These were created by sort of a think group in North Carolina University, and they have lasting impact. So we can go through them very briefly. The first one is equitable use. It's a design that works for everyone in the same way without alienating or separating any group or individual.
And then number 2 is flexibility in use. It allows for individual preferences and customization. So if you want to move chairs around the room, you can do that.
For your pillow forts.
Yes, exactly.
The next one is simple and intuitive use, right? So this is sort of a concept that means it's not, you don't have to think about it to use it. If you have something going around in a circle, you're not going to have like a square like shape in it. Just anything that is consistent with user expectations.
Number 4 is perceptible information, which means use of different formats, pictorial, verbal, and tactile, for redundant information and legibility. So for example, if we had someone request a DERAIL format of the program today, that's an example of principle number 4.
The next one is tolerance for error. So that's basically trying to make it not breakable and not hazardous. So there should just be minimal ways that things can go wrong.
And then number 6 is low physical effort. Basically efficiency of the space, comfort, and ease of use.
And last but not least, size and space for approaching use. I think this is also the hardest one to get at because we were just talking about the limits of physical space that we work in. However, we can continue to view the space and try to find ways that it's easy for everyone to approach, whether, size, shape, assistive device, giant backpacks, that everyone can approach the environment. And so on that note, let's go to the Czech Republic. So I was lucky enough to go to a study abroad program, actually with the North Carolina University program. And we went to this town called Hradec Králové, which is a few hours outside of Prague. And there, I just really had to take note of their municipal library because it was so spacious and so well lit and so beautiful, but also the way that they gave us the tour. I knew that the staff has special emphasis on creating an environment of accessibility. So here's a few pictures. We have 2 pictures up here. The one on the left, your left, is the building from the side. And this building actually used to be a fiberglass factory. So they had a lot of raw material to work with. It was huge. The floors are really strong. They could just pound holes in to make all these great windows and natural light. And here's the aerial view. So you can see that sort of a nice big X shape. And that even in the top there are those skylights. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then this is their branding. That's all throughout the library. It's very consistent. And Knova means library in Czech, so now we learned a new word. So the first thing, again, my first big impression of this library was the space and the light. The one on the right, bordered in red, is these huge aisle in between shelving. Now, of course, that's sort of a more main hallway, but even between the shelves, you could easily get a wheelchair between any of those shelves. And then it's also, when you're walking around, you can walk 2 people abreast. So if someone is deaf and they're having a conversation, they don't have to interrupt their conversation to turn a corner or anything like that. They can continue to have their conversation with eyesight of each other. Additionally, here's the rooftop. I also really like the rooftop because I think that the rooftop is sort of an area of special events, but it's so sometimes hard to navigate because roofs are weird. And this one is just so broad, flat. There's no hazards in the way of any assistive assistive devices.
Can everyone use the roof space?
Everyone can use the roof space because there's an elevator that goes to it.
Woo!
Yes. So that is a great example of number 7, size and space for approach and use. Okay, more space. And more examples within the library. All of these desks have plenty of space in between them. The chairs are easily removable so that you could replace it with your own chair or shape it however you want. The picture on the right is me. Hi. And I'm using a CCTV device, which is sort of like a projector to enlarge, letters or whatever is placed on the pad. The other thing that I really like about this CCTV device is that it was in line of sight. So it wasn't hidden away in a corner somewhere where if someone was like, where is this? You walk up and it's on your left, right? So it's very accessible space, and also you can see that the desk has lots of space around it. It is within reach of everyone.
So no one has to overtly identify themselves as a person with a disability in order to use the CCTV or the computers.
And you don't have to ask for help to find it.
Independent living is how it should be.
Okay, and speaking of the elevator, the picture on the left is clear glass. I'm in the elevator. It's totally clear. Actually, I think the floor was not much, thank God. But yeah, there's plenty of natural light there. It was a very spacious elevator. And then the one on the right and bordered in red, I don't know what, I just really like these buttons because they're right in a row. This is a great example of the redundant information thing, right? They're vertical and they match the floors. So if you're going by touch, you don't have to figure out like which horizontal button is which floor. It's just in a row. And the first floor, or the ground, sticks out and it's green, so it's also distinct in that way. So if you're trying to get back to home base, you know which button it is. And the buttons all have the sort of tactile numbers too, so you can feel like that. And to the left, there's the Braille numbers as well. So I just really like how this is a very well developed panel. The alarm button is yellow and very distinct. It's also sort of raised from the panel.
You were saying how the elevator's glass. What do you think Willy Wonka's elevator would look like?
Probably like a rocket ship.
So that's principle.
Okay. Another noticeable item, the tactile map. This was right on the second floor. So the first floor, is sort of mapped out. You can see it. The second floor, this great map has color-coded. There's 4 different colors: pink, blue, yellow, and green. Yellow-green. All of those markings are raised, so you can interact with it in that way. And there's also Braille markings. You actually can't see the Braille markings. You wouldn't need to. But there's Braille markings on there as well, next to it. So that was, I thought, very helpful, not only in its location, which was right off the stairwell, and right off the elevators, but also in the various ways that you can interact with it. Next, the guidelines. I really like the guidelines, guys. Those are great. This was on the first floor especially, but there were some guidelines on the second floor as well. It's these really broad yellow lines, you can't miss them. And then the red lines are raised a little bit, so you can follow along in any tactile way with a cane or anything like that. And they lead straight to the elevators, to the bathrooms, to the circulation desk. Simple and intuitive, follow the line. Tolerance for error. You can't really go wrong with raised guidelines, and they're not hazardous to wheelchairs or any other assistive devices.
Where does the yellow brick road lead to, though?
Thank you, Nicole. The yellow brick road leads to movable furniture. So movable furniture is great. As you can see in this picture with the blue border, there's a blue floor. There's lots of squishy round cushions that you can move in any shape that you want to. You can go sit in a corner if you want, or you can hang out with a group. There's also higher seating, so if you don't want to sit on the floor, you can sit in these black and white chairs. And then there's some really comfortable giant beanbags over there. There's a few different shaped tables, which were light, you could move them around. And so even in this other picture too, where you have the red chairs and the small square tables, I really like that design of the small square tables, because you can have them, you know, just as you see there, there's 5 of them in a group, so it's a bigger table, but you could just as easily have, you know, a long vertical table, you could make a big square, you could do a lot with this movable furniture and allow for flexibility.
Customization at its finest.
Yes. Let patrons seize the space.
Sorry about that, I think I missed my cue. Whoops.
Okay, and the first one, so on the first floor, the next part of this that I'd really like to highlight is their audio library, which they were very extremely proud of, and they gave us a lot of information about. It's right on the first floor. It's right off the entrance to your left. And so it's extremely easy to find. The first picture is of this glass door with some icons and Czech language on it. And the second is the picture of the room. So you can see the red guideline on the whole yellow floor, leading straight to the desk. And there's some shelving there. So I just want to talk a little bit about I'll talk a little bit about the whole audio library system that they've installed in the library. One of the big things, and this was within the whole Czech Republic too, was the audio guidance beacons. It's a really boring ceiling, but there's actually a little speaker in the corner that when you are, if you're blind or visually impaired, you can ask the government or receive little electronic devices. Now these devices means that you can press certain buttons and then you'll receive audio guidance from these speakers in public. They're installed all around the Czech Republic. There's 18,000, and this was like last year, so there could be more. So the library itself has made extensive use of these. It's a public project, but also, you know, institutions can install their own. So the library has made extensive use of these, not only in installing devices from the bus stop to the library, but within the library itself. So that anyone who has this device, and most of the community does, can press buttons and the voice will come and guide them, and it will combine with the guidelines in the library to allow independent travel within the library.
And we do have not exactly the same thing in the US, but there are applications that you can download on your phones that people with visual impairments or any other impairment can still use. I can't think of them at the moment, but I can send you any information if you have questions.
And do you think those would be able to be integrated into a library?
It should be.
Yeah. Okay, so back to the physical space of the audio library. It has 3,000 books on CD in Czech language. But even though they're all on CD, they're easily downloadable in lots of different formats, so on lots of different devices. You can also send in a request to the librarian to get a preloaded device. They also have hundreds of movies, of Czech movies, with the audio track.
We know that has audio description in the US.
And so everyone can participate in these cultural moments of movies. And all the computers there's another CCTV in that room, and all the computers in that room have screen readers as well. We talked about Third Space as a community. They've done a lot to make this audio library a central part of their community. So they have navigation and job training. In fact, they are the location of one of the largest in the Czech Republic, spatial orientation competition. So every year they have an annual competition for spatial orientation, and I've heard it's a lot of fun.
Sounds like they want to be the punk-ass book jockeys.
Yes, for sure. Who wouldn't? There's a tri-monthly social meeting where everyone can gather, and the library can announce new technology, or there can be community announcements, they can talk about website updates, all of that good stuff. And by opening this space to the community, the library empowers patrons to make it into that living process social space. Two more in my section. Lucas Tremmel was one of our guides at the end, and he was really great to talk to. He had a lot of information for us. He only works there 1 day a week and is a volunteer because in his day job, He is a professor at the Pratt-Kralove University. He was extensively involved in this project. He's blind himself, and he's a huge activist within the community. So he trains library employees. He's a touchstone within the community as an activist. And is very much engaged in barrier-free issues, raising public awareness, and so forth.
Didn't you say it's his voice on the beacons?
Yes, his voice is the one recorded on all the library voice beacons. So he knows exactly what folks need to hear. Yeah.
Because he lives it.
And so I'd like to end on this note. Like I said at the beginning, one of the things that most impressed me was we had a few different guides within our tour, and they all pointed out these various accessibility features that I previously mentioned, and a few more. And so I'd like to, everyone who works in the library is a representative of its brand, right? Of the values and standards of the institution at the library. So it was a point of pride for their staff to say that everyone from the director to the janitor who works in the building, everyone was trained in these accessibility, barrier-free awareness. And I thought it was a really great tour and a really great library. So, thanks. And now Nicole, speaking of staff.
So, moving from serving our patrons to our communities, we want to make sure we don't just focus on the people we serve, but we want to make sure that the people we serve, which they includes people on both sides of the desk. That's my main point. So I want to start this off saying that there's nothing about us without us movement, and that can be helpful for all users and users and people in marginalized communities. That this, for example, is the disability rights movement. It's when people with disabilities have fought to live independently. Oops, sorry. Thank you, Bridget. And I want to make sure people understand libraries are for everyone. For patrons who that's who our literature focuses more on, and the employees and staff who serve them. Moving from a student to employee, I really want to make sure this point is driven home. And one example of that is the Libraries Are for Everyone initiative, such as the banner you see above us. It depicts a person with a cochlear implant, a person holding a 3D object, possibly the castle, and a person in a motorized wheelchair looking at a house. So we don't know if these people are patrons or the employees. And we are both, whether we work in a library or we go to another one. So it's only right to say that we make sure we include this thinking. And individuals who identify as having a disability only count for 4% of potential librarians. And this is from the Office of Diversity, Literacy, and Outreach Services. 4%. That's pretty low. A lot of work to do. So I wanted to focus on what the ALA can do and what they already have in place, and then what LIS programs can do and what they think they have in place. So the ALA must work with employers to recruit people with disabilities into the library profession, first as LIS students, and then throughout each level of leadership in the libraries that they end up working in. And then LIS programs should learn about accessibility issues, teach assistive technology, also called AT, the needs of people with disabilities and the users they serve. And then also the laws applicable to the rights of people with disabilities as they impact the library services. And then I just want to make sure people know it's never too late to recognize the needs and make a difference. At Simmons, we've only had one class that was focused on this topic. And we didn't really have a lot of space in our other courses to discuss this. So for me, I've had to find my own spaces to include this thinking and really to my community and my friends. So a couple of things that I've done since graduating. The ABCs of Accessible Libraries. It was a 5-minute Ignite talk at the New England Library Association, basically relating one issue related to libraries according with each letter of the alphabet. They're really hard to plan, let me tell you that now. Disability Employment Awareness Month is October, and the Mass Department of Transportation had a event where I was the youth speaker with this. It was one of my favorite things to ever do. I met so many people in government, and it's been really helpful, either meeting people on my own or knowing people who know someone who can make a difference, and learning how to bridge our professions. And then assistive technology in the classroom. Most of this has included using apps or other technologies such as coding, and how to bring children with disabilities and teens with disabilities into the classroom, and making sure that they have the same experience as their non-neurodiverse classmates or non-disabled classmates. One example is there are apps that you can use for Legos for someone with a mobility impairment, where their classmates could use actual Legos just to have that ease of use back in there. And then also a couple of presentations. Accessible makerspaces with the Palmer Public Library. We basically made sure people who are people in wheelchairs able to use their space. What about deaf users? Can they see each other? Blind users? Do we have any sharp objects that are in the space that they could hurt themselves on? We want to make sure that everyone can use the space equally. And am I going too fast? Everyone understanding me okay? Also, Shrewsbury Public Library, serving patrons with disabilities. That's kind of self-explanatory. And then most recently, Disability Essentials in Your Library, hosted by the Mass Library System. They have a whole webinar series on that, but we kicked it off at the Earl Center, where I currently work. And they have a continuing web series going now. I think the most recent one was Disability on the Shelf, which is collection development and finding disability in our collections. And then there's another one, accessible programs at your library.
Nicole, can I sign up for that?
I will let you know as soon as I can. I'm actually doing one sometime in May. Once I have more info, I'll let you all know.
And you can also follow Nicole on Twitter.
And then there are a lot of things I wish I knew as a grad student and as a new professional, but I wanted to boil them down for you as much as I could in one slide. Let's see how this goes. So resources, ASLA, and their accessibility tip sheets.
What does ASLA stand for?
It's the Association of Specialized Cooperative Library Agencies. They're actually merging with the FAFLR, FAFLR, which is the military libraries, and their acronym is changing with adding a G after the C, I believe. And then ACRL's usability, or Universal Accessibility Interest Group, which is pretty cool. And professional development within your organizations, if you're not part of either of these two. If you're part of ELA, which is public libraries, SLA, special libraries, see what they have in those organizations. And then even see if you can create one on your own. You never know who's going to get involved. And then also, sensory and experiential learning.
What is that?
It's basically using mobility devices or anything you might see a person with a disability using and trying it out on your own. It's kind of it has a reputation, of not being the best thing. People have mixed feelings for it, but I found it to be incredibly helpful that your body remembers what you learn. For example, if you're learning what it's like to be a wheelchair user and you go down a ramp, up a ramp, down a hallway, opening the automatic doors that don't open, going to the bathroom, you sort of understand what users in wheelchairs have to go through every single day of their lives. And you have just an inkling of how you can make the library better. For example, with the MLS sensory training that we did recently, there was one of my friends did a history of long canes, which are the canes that you see people with visual impairments using. Did the history and usage, so we actually went through the DERAIL Center, swinging the cane across the different floor types and seeing, okay, if you swing it this way, you hit one side of the walkway. If you hit this way, you hit the desk. So you want to get them oriented to where they are. And then assistant tech that we know with computers, Daisy, which is another screen reader, and the built-in features for Mac and Windows, such as JAWS. I know a couple people might know what that is. And then I already talked about accessing the library in a wheelchair. And using a manual wheelchair is also very different than a motorized wheelchair, just so you know. And then also, don't assume that you know what is right for your patrons. Ask them what the best thing is for them. For example, 3D printing. People may think that creating something for the users in their community is better than empowering them to do it on their own. Sighted guide. That's basically asking a person with a visual impairment, can I show you where you're going? Okay, we're turning left, turning right, the chair's on your right side. Giving them more direction so they can get oriented and know where they're going. Yeah.
Nicole, could I ask you about that 3D printing thing? Was there something that someone created with 3D printing?
Let's see, there's so many different options. But two I really enjoy are called the Billy push button. This was created by one of our volunteers at the DERAIL Center. She's now a MSW at Wheelock. Her service dog, Billy, wasn't able to press the buttons that open the automatic doors because his paws would always slip off. So she created these buttons that would stick to the door that he was able to grab onto, and then she was able to take it off. So she's actually gone through at least 5 iterations now, where the button itself is about 1 inch thick to almost over 1 inch thick, but the paw was still raised up so you could hit it. And then there's another one, I forget his name, but he's a German activist. He created a small ramp through 3D printing that you could put on a curb cut and actually be able to get up to the curb without having the issue going all the way around and making your own. And also, these items are not patented, because if you patent something, then there's the issue with copyright, and you want to make sure people are able to download these files and make them conducive to their own use. So that's another big thing in the disability community. And then getting things from high shelves. Someone in a wheelchair may be able to actually get out of the wheelchair and get something. If not, they will ask. So don't assume. And then the best way to communicate. If someone who is deaf or has hearing loss may have learned American Sign Language, ASL, as their first language, they might feel better with an interpreter. But if they have learned English as a second language or in conjunction with ASL, they may feel more comfortable with writing things down. You never know. Again, don't assume. Any questions, comments, sarcastic remarks? How they do?
All right. Thank you, audience. We will now take questions. And so to customers.
Criticism, please be critical.
I was just wondering, do you know, Hello. I was wondering if you know of any good examples of third spaces in the Boston area for us to explore.
Last year we talked a lot about the Boston Public Library. They also have, especially their children's room is extremely interactive. They have a lot of tactile things on the walls. They have a lot of guidelines. But the thing is like, there's no reason that you can't do that for adult spaces as well. But I do really like how the Boston Public Library has renovated and created more accessible spaces, more labels, and things like that. And we can continue for that idea.
And then one that I just thought of is Improv Asylum, or is it Asylum? I forget the exact name. I remember seeing one of the performances which was down a flight of stairs with no accessible entrance. So just think of where you want to spend your time, and can your friends spend time with you in those places.
But Nicole also put a lot of further resources on the handout. And so there's a lot of good links and reading on there.
And if you guys think of anything, let us know.
And Quincy, I noticed that you had borders around the images in your part of the presentation, and I thought that was probably intentional, and the borders were different colors. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I was matching the library branding and also the border at the bottom. But yeah, I mean, I do think borders make pictures easier to see. The colors themselves was not intentional, but you know, color blindness is something to take into account too. Fortunately, there wasn't too much necessary contrasting. It was more just, yes, thank you for noticing that.
We do have alt tags on all of our images, so if someone is visually impaired, they can hover over the image and see what
I thought you were following some kind of international standard. Now I just know that you're just such a designer.
Thank you.
Good. So I know that this presentation was really focused on sort of an international lens, but with recent legislation, the ADA has been very severely undermined. And I'm wondering if you could speak to that and like how you see efforts like this continuing in light of that situation.
I will definitely preface this with saying I'm not so much on the political standpoint of this as just trying to figure out what libraries can do. But I do know in my group of friends that there are legislations that have been passed, such as, I believe it's HR 620, I forget the exact name, that do say the ADA is basically going to be defunct. And it's saying, in that instance, that businesses do not have to be ADA accessible. And then if someone complains, they have to have a certain amount of time in order to make themselves accessible and have a certain level of complaints in order to move forward with that accessibility. So that's basically saying people with disabilities may not attend, may not come to these spaces. So it's basically pushing people who are other out. And I know that's one thing that needs to be spoken more about in not just libraries, but every profession. Because we're not, I would say, I would not know about this unless someone told me. So we need to be more mindful of where these are coming from and share.
May I add something? Yes. I would also, so we talked about how will this look like in libraries. First of all, we can have, as a community, we can open up community discussions, things like that. And also just, I think this is a time and place for us to be aware that we're not held back by legalities. Like, we don't have to hold ourselves to a legal standard. We can hold ourselves to the ideal standard, and always keep moving for that. And I think, you know, we're all here of a like mind in any case. But I think that's also encouragement to ourselves to keep moving and also to open it up to the community and raise some awareness. Do we have a question in the back also?
Do you have any suggestions for kind of advocacy or how to convince higher ups that these modifications are important and of value?
What kind of modifications are you looking
Not modifications, but like how, like there's a cord like in the middle of my library, and I'm like, this is unsafe. Everyone can try it. It makes accessibility hazard. Not modifications, but like paying any attention to making spaces accessible. How, if the people in charge of making financial decisions don't see the value, do you have any suggestions for convincing them?
I would just, I assume they're not disabled in any way.
I don't have a physical disability.
I mean, if there's, for example, a cord in the middle of your library, you could say, if someone trips on it, they could break an ankle or break a bone, and that would make them temporarily disabled. Temporary disabled. Can you hear me? No? Is that better? Okay. Sorry, guys. I'm really bad at this. And the temporary disability would create more of a impediment for that person for a longer period of time than it would be to move that cord quickly or spending money to do that. So it's basically saying you gotta spend the money now and avoid problems, or keep it and make problems.
And if I may, there are also lots of studies that have been done, that are continuing to be done. These are being raised in international conferences as well. And so there's information out there that you can use to say, hey, like this is a huge topic of conversation within our profession. Like to not do this is not professional. Right? And then another thing I would say is, oh, I lost it. Okay, we'll come back to it. Do we have any other questions from Twitter or anything like that? Oh, sorry, I remembered what it was. So any sort of community surveys. I mean, like I hate community surveys, but this is why they make us do it in library school, because I remember a comment one time in class where it's like, oh, well, we don't have blind people in our community, so we don't need to have screen readers. And it's like, well, they're not showing up in your library because you don't have screen readers. And so I think that sort of the community surveys, the statistical data, all that stuff that is exhausting but necessary for funding, some of it is already out there, and so that information can be very valuable for that sort of discussion with higher ups. We make one more question.
Hi. So this is kind of a comment more than anything. I'm in user experience research, and this is actually very important, primarily because people with disabilities are not the only ones affected by the way you create a space or create a program. So in cases where you have something that could potentially become an issue, like the one you presented, it's not, you can frame it as this is not an issue now because there aren't any people with disabilities. It's not about that. It's about creating a space that is inclusive, and if you consider people with disabilities, it helps to create a better space, but you're really creating a space for all, because whether someone can walk now does not necessarily mean they can walk later or best, and not everyone is always paying attention when they're walking. Like, it's just, you have to consider all of the ways that a space affects everyone. And so in user experience, we consider accessibility not just as a thing that affects people with disabilities, but a thing that affects everyone.
And to add to that, disability isn't always about people who are older. You can become disabled at any point of your life. And you want to make sure it's easy for you now so you don't have to worry about it later, as you just said. And user services and making sure you have policies for users with disabilities, it's just paving the pathway for that.
Hopefully a smooth pathway that is easily accessible.